37. Dressed with dignity. KO'd. 30. That is the number of suits I brought with me from Nigeria. I understand that 30 is a lot of suits for anyone to bring with him when he moves from one country to another, especially an asylum seeker who lives in a homeless shelter. But I have always believed that the way in which you present yourself will have an impact on how people respond to you. If you take no care in your appearance, then surely people will assume that you do not see yourself as being worthy of care. If it is obvious from just one look that you do not believe in yourself, then why should anyone else? The whole 4 months that I worked in the restaurant kitchen, and then for the 7 months I spent cleaning people's homes, I had to dress for the job. I had to wear tennis shoes and t-shirts and jeans. In other words, I had to dress nothing like a man who believes he is going somewhere in life. I had to dress like someone who was lost. Don't get me wrong. I do not dress to make people believe I am special and above others. I am not an arrogant man, and I do not need people to love me. But I do want to be treated with respect, and to have people treat me with dignity. Why is that? Not because I am a prince or the grandson of a king. Not because I have owned a business and property and achieved some of my goals in life. I want to be treated right because of the simple truth that I am a human being just like you, and we all have dignity. We all deserve to be treated well. So all those months that I worked for $6 an hour were difficult for me. I felt invisible and overlooked. More than anything, I felt as if I had to forget about a part of me, the part that I had inherited from my father and grandfather, the part that people would look to for help, for advice, for support. Of course, I had no other choice than to put those feelings aside and keep working. My suits remained jammed in my closet, packed in bags under the bed, or hanging on the back of the door. Only once each week, on Sunday, could I pull one out and return to my old, familiar self. But all of this changed when Oluwatoyin and I received our social security numbers and work authorizations. From that point on, I was no longer one of the million-strong army of unofficial workers in the city. I was finally able to put my plan into action and take the next step toward making it big. It was not quick, and there were more tests to take and forms to fill out and hurdles to be cleared, but as our one-year anniversary of being in the shelter approached, I finally became an Uber driver. It changed things for us as a family. Even though I was paying for gas as well as $350 each week to rent a car, another Toyota Camry, just like my car back in Nigeria, I was able to earn more money than I had from either of my previous 2 jobs. If the boys needed sneakers or Oluwatoyin needed clothes, we could finally afford it. Having the car also saved us time. I was able to take Oluwatoyin to and from Pastor Philip's house when she went there to cook, and on Sunday mornings we no longer had to wake up at 7 in the morning and spend 2.25 hours on 2 trains and a bus in order to get to church. We could simply leave the shelter at 9:30 a.m. and arrive feeling well. I started work each day at 6 a.m. and finished at 6 p.m., just in time to make it to the real estate class I had enrolled in on 6th Avenue. If I had time between jobs during the day, I would park and study, but I was careful not to neglect my duties as an Uber driver. I was committed to making it a success, and even before I started the job, I knew exactly how I would do that. I offered all my passengers a complimentary bottle of water and had a full range of cell phone adapters plugged in and ready to charge whatever device they used. If they coughed, I offered them tissues and more water, and I always opened the door for them at the start and end of each journey. And of course, I always wore a suit. It did not take long for people to notice. Some of my passengers would ask how long I had been driving, and they would often be surprised when I told them it was only a matter of weeks or months. Others said they liked how clean and well-equipped the Camry was, but nearly all of them commented on my suits. They'd tell me I was sharply dressed, and I'd tell them about my father in Nigeria, who was the son of a king, and how he would always tell me, "Son, how you dress is how you will be addressed." My passengers often liked hearing that story, and I liked telling it. I liked it even more when I got home at the end of the day, checked the app, and saw the tips that I had earned. The biggest change of all was how it made me feel. When someone sees you the same way that you believe you can be seen, it is such a powerful thing. Nobody ever questioned why I was cleaning pans in the restaurant, and only occasionally when I was cleaning houses did someone say, "Hey, you're well dressed there," or "You're doing a good job." But Uber was different. Uber gave me the opportunity for people to look at me in a new way. In many ways, there is nothing different about washing pans, or cleaning apartments, or driving people from one meeting to another. You are still serving people by performing a task they do not wish to perform themselves. But by keeping my car immaculate, telling my stories, and wearing my suits, I was no longer invisible to most people. I was able to be myself again. For months, I had been working hard in the hope that it would pay off, and that one day I would see the rewards. Between Uber and my evenings spent studying to become a real estate agent, I regained so much of my old confidence. I would sit in the class on 6th Avenue tired from 12 hours of driving, but eager to learn and excited about the doorway that would open once I passed. Of course, it was not easy, but I had a lifetime of lessons and perseverance to draw on. Every time someone stood up at the front and told us how lucky we would be to pass or how difficult it was to make it in real estate, I had so many memories to draw on. Working on a building site for my father in the heat of the African sun, hauling paper and ink around the print shop, struggling with scalding water and thick layers of grease in the kitchen while my family was asleep at home. I am not a lazy man. I know that hard work pays off. One evening when the course was nearly over, I listened to a broker who stood at the front and told the room that only those of us who were fortunate would pass the test. I waited in line at the end, introduced myself, and asked him for a card. 1 month later, just minutes after I had received the email notifying me of my passing the test, I dialed his number. "Good morning, sir," I began. "My name is Tani Adewumi, and I am one of the fortunate ones." 38. Taking time to think.
38. Taking time to think. Aloud. I said goodbye, watched Tani run into school, and paused. Tani had been particularly talkative that morning, his eyes wide, full of excitement as we walked. His joy had nothing to do with the first fall of snow on the ground or the fact that Christmas was less than a month away. Coach Russ had invited and paid for him to attend a tournament in Orlando, and we were due to leave in 2 days. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Grandma was the last thing I was expecting. As I opened the message, I could feel my pulse rise. By the time I'd finished reading it, I was almost ready to faint. "You know that your uncle is sick. He's got worse and had some tests. The results are bad. He has 1 month to live. Call me." I did what she said. I spoke with Grandma. Our call did not last long. It was our first conversation since we had left Dallas, and she sounded older, like the 1 year that had passed since she asked us to leave had really been 10. She told me that he had cancer and that the hospital had said there was nothing more they could do for him. "How is he?" Grandma started to say something, then stopped herself. "Dying," she said quietly, "but peaceful." Another pause. "You can come visit him if you want, Aloud." "Thank you," I said. Our words dried up, and there was nothing else to say. I spoke to my uncle as soon as I could, but though he said he was happy for me to visit, he did not want to talk too much on the phone. He said it made him tired, and I could hear the energy draining from his voice minute by minute. He passed the phone back to Grandma, and we fixed a date for me to visit soon after Tani and I returned from the tournament, and we said goodbye. As soon as we arrived in Orlando, I was aware that part of my head and heart were in Dallas. I wanted to support Tani and the coaches and be there to celebrate the team, but I also wanted to be with my uncle. The news of him dying was like an instant wound had opened up in my flesh. There was a constant ache, a pain that sometimes retreated into the background a little but could never be completely forgotten. At any particular moment, without any warning at all, the sadness and the fear and the shock could come screaming back into me. I was torn in two, and it hurt more than I imagined. "How are you managing it?" I looked up and saw a mom that I knew from New York. I was sitting on the floor in the hotel corridor while Tani was playing a match in the meeting room nearby. Parents and coaches aren't allowed in the room when tournament matches are being played, and most of the time we hang out together in a team room with Coach Russ, Coach Sean, the other coaches, and all the parents with kids in Coach Russ's programs. Most of the time I like it in there. I sit and talk and join in the laughter with everyone else. But on the first morning in Orlando, I found myself drifting along the corridors, happy to be quiet and on my own. This mom, Tori, sat down and smiled. "Your son, Tani, he's so passionate about the game. My boy's always talking about him. How do you get him to stay so engaged like that? Do you have to keep on at him to practice? Is it as hard for you as it is for me?" "Thank you," I said. "You're very kind." I wondered if she had any experience of what it was like to live in a homeless shelter, but looking at the way she was dressed, I guess not. So I decided not to tell her about that part of our lives. Instead, I told her what any mom would understand. When he comes home from school or Thursday practice, he eats, then he takes a nap. I wake him up at maybe 6:30 or 7, and he does his homework and eats some more if he's still hungry. After that, he can do whatever chess things his coaches have set for him, then play puzzles or play with his brother until 9. Then we pray until 9:30, then bed. "You're lucky," said Tori. "I come back from work so late, and I don't have time to help him. But I want him to do well here. This is such a great opportunity, don't you think?" "That's true," I said. "Chess is such a good thing in Tani's life. In all our lives." We sat for a moment and both watched the crowd as it flowed past us. I'd been to tournaments with Tani before, but they were always local. They were mostly held in schools and lasted a single day. But the one in Orlando was way bigger than anything I had seen before, as kids from all over the US gathered to compete. The competition was spread over 3 days. There were hundreds of children ready to play, and the whole place was full of noise, crowds, and excitement. A team room door next to us opened, and a boy not much older than Tani burst out, followed by a man I guessed was his father. The dad looked mad, his face red and neck veins bulging. "You drew," he shouted, loud enough to make other people stop in the corridor and look. "Why'd you have to draw?" The kid threw his chessboard down on the ground. "Why are you always on at me like this? What will you do if I lose?" The father glanced around and must have seen people looking at him. He leaned in and whispered something. The boy's face turned red. He started crying. "I'm not playing anymore." This was the first time I'd seen anything like this. Most of the time, parents were encouraging and supportive, especially in the team room with Coach Russ, Coach Sean, and all the others. There are always a lot of hugs and high fives, fist bumps, and laughter whenever they're around. And after every match, the players bring out their notation books, in which they have recorded the match move by move, and the coaches huddle round and analyze them. It's a special time, and the conversations are full of praise and encouragement. And where they find a mistake, the coaches seem to have an ability to help the players see it for themselves and work out what else they could have done. Tori went to get a snack, and I drifted back to our team room to be ready for Tani when he finished his match. It was quiet in the room, with just a handful of parents sitting around chatting quietly or reading. Coach Russ came over to me and asked how I was. I hadn't told anyone about my uncle, and I did not know how. Besides, being in Orlando was a good distraction. So I didn't have to lie when I told him that I was well and happy to be at the tournament. "Tani was pretty excited this morning, huh, Mrs. Adewumi?" "Very excited. He's been talking about this ever since you invited him. It was so kind of you to make it possible for us to come." He waved his hands. "Don't mention it. It's all taken care of. And you know, we just love having Tani around. Everybody loves him. He's a special kid." "Thank you, Coach Russ." Coach Russ paused a while. "You know, this tournament is a big step up for him. He's always asking me, am I doing good? Am I working hard enough? Am I number one? The answer is often yes back home, but here it's going to be different. Here he's up against kids who've been coached for years. Kids from families with no limit to their resources. Kids who spend their whole year traveling around the country to attend events like this. So the question isn't whether he's going to win a trophy, because, barring a miracle, he's really not. The question I'm fascinated by is, how is he going to respond to coming such a long way back from the winners? You remember that tournament with the trophy, don't you? I did. He still got that trophy in his room, Coach Russ. That's good. And I want him to get a whole lot more as well. But he's got to be hungry enough for them that he fights for them on the chessboard, that he dedicates himself to getting better every day. Don't get me wrong, he has a lot of heart. He works hard, doesn't fear the challenge, and he's got talent. But there are a ton of other kids like that here today. The difference between them and the champions is how they handle the pressure. Can they keep their mindset correct all through the tournament and not get distracted, even when there's so much going on around them here? That's our job as coaches, to figure out what is going on with the games and help keep his mindset correct. There was movement on the other side of the room, and the door from the match hall opened. It was Tani. He looked at me and then at Coach Russ and held out a fist with the thumb stuck up. A first-round victory. But Tani wasn't happy. He wasn't bouncing like he had been before, and after giving me a quick hug, he walked over to Coach Sean, pulled open his notation book, and got to work. The more I listened to them talk, the warmer I felt inside. Look at this, Tani, knight to g3. This is what I'm talking about. You make moves of such quality. They're so confident and bold. Yeah, but I blundered. I could have lost. True, but you didn't lose, and you know where you blundered, don't you? That move, he said, pointing to the book. I left myself exposed. That's right. You blundered, but you saw it. And let's make it a positive and ask, what did you learn from this? Tani thought for a moment. I need to not rush. There you go. That's a lesson right there. And it's a lesson that can take years to learn fully. But today you've got to jump on the other guys who haven't even started to figure it out. Tani sighed. But I've got 6 more rounds to go. What if I blunder again? You just take it 1 round at a time. Let's not focus on a prize. Let's focus on the work, okay? Yes, Coach Sean. All right. So you've got a couple of hours before your next game, and I want you to look at your openings and do another 20 puzzles. That okay? Good. I want you to keep calm, keep your mind engaged on the game, and don't allow yourself to get distracted. Can you do that, Tani? Yes, Coach Sean. By the time his next round of matches was about to start, Tani was bouncing with excitement again. Coach Sean pulled all the players from PS 116 together and told them to listen up. To be a champion, you have to have the mindset of a champion. Remember what Magnus Carlsen said when the journalist asked him if he was going to win the tournament? All 5 players answered as one, chanting the words together. I'm not worried about winning, I'm worried about playing my best. That's right. Now, I've got something for you all. He dug around in his backpack and pulled out a handful of chess pieces. It was only when he had handed his players 1 each and they held them up that I could see they were all the same. You're the knights of the round table, remember? I watched you all these last 2 hours, and you've all been working so hard. You've been focused and calm, and I know for sure that right now you're ready to go into battle. You're ready to do your absolute best. Tani and the other 4 hadn't taken their eyes off Coach Sean since he'd called them over. He was like a magician performing a trick or an artist creating a beautiful picture right in front of their eyes. They were completely under his spell. Now, said Coach Sean, checking the time, we're ready to go. Who's feeling confident? 5 hands shot up into the air. That's good, that's good. So let's bring up the confidence meter. They all put their hands in the middle, low at first, then bringing them up as one, cheering and laughing the higher they went. Okay, last thing now. We got to build each of you up before we send you into battle in there. Who wants in first? Tani? Okay, come right in here. What do we say, everyone? Tani, Tani, Tani. The chanting grew louder and louder until it was a shout that filled the room. By the time the door to the match hall opened, Tani and the other 4 players from PS 116 almost ran in. I didn't leave the team room for much of the rest of the day. I liked being there. It was quieter than it was out in the corridor, and it was good to be able to talk to the other parents. And the way that the coaches and the other parents talked to me left me feeling like I was part of the team too. It was only when Tani went for his fourth and final match of the day that I left the room. All day I'd seen other parents offer to buy the coaches coffee or share their food with them, and I'd seen a market on the way into the hotel the day before. Mrs. Adewumi said Coach Sean when I returned and brought him a plate of roast chicken, rice, and plantain. "This is too kind of you." "I can't." I fixed him my best Nigerian mama stare. "Coach Sean, I'm so grateful to you for all you're doing for my son. Please, accept this gift from me to you." He smiled and leaned his face over the plate. "Well, it does smell pretty good. But can I pay? Please, let me give you something for this." This time I didn't just give him the Nigerian mama stare. I folded my arms and raised my eyes. Okay. I'm not going to win here, am I?" "No, you're not, Coach Sean. Know when you're beaten. Now, please, eat up."
39. Gifts before Christmas. Tani. I won my last game at the tournament in Orlando and ended up with 3 wins, 1 draw, and 3 losses. I was in 94th place. It wasn't as high as some of the people that came from New York, but it was okay for me, I guess. Coach Russ and Coach Sean both told me that it was a good score to get because I hadn't been to a big tournament like that before, and there was a lot to learn about it. They were right. Every other tournament I'd played in had seemed big, but this one was really big. The match hall was noisy, and there were lots of people everywhere you looked, so it was easy to get distracted. And some of the people I played were really good and played really fast and really confidently. All those things added together meant that I was not playing at my best. There was one more big difference, but not the kind of difference that affected my score. At this tournament, there was even a shop. Not a shop selling fruit snacks, but a shop selling things that would help you play chess, such as books and boards and all kinds of great stuff. I'd seen it on the first morning, and all through the tournament, I'd heard people talk about what they were going to buy and how much money their moms or dads had given them. I didn't have any money of my own, and I didn't want to ask Mom. So I kept quiet and waited until someone started talking about something else. When the tournament was almost all over and we were sitting around the team room, waiting for the last games to finish, I saw people walking around the room with bags from the shop. Some of my friends came over to me and showed me what they'd bought. "Hey, Tani," they'd say. "Look at this cool clock I got. It's digital and the lights are all different colors." Or, "Hey, Tani, I got this book, do you want to see it?" I definitely liked everything they'd bought. But I definitely also felt like I really didn't want to look too long at the clocks or books or whatever, because if I did, then I started to feel weird inside. Coach Sean had been sitting with me, but he left when everyone started coming over to show me their things. I wondered whether maybe he didn't have much money either. But then I saw him coming back into the team room. He had a bag just like everyone else, and so I knew that he'd been to the shop too. He said, "Hey, Tani. Come here, will you?" I went over to the corner of the room where he was standing. He said, "I got an early Christmas gift for you." He was holding open the bag so I could see inside. It was a chess bag. But it wasn't just a regular chess bag. It was the best chess bag I'd ever seen in my entire life. It was black and made of leather and had a shoulder strap as well as 2 handles, and it had a rolled-up board inside and all the pieces as well as space for a clock and a notation book and pens. It was amazing and the best present I'd ever been given, ever. I jumped up on a chair and gave Coach Sean a hug. I didn't want to let go, but I did let go because I wanted to check my bag out some more. Coach Angel came over and said, "What's that, Tani?" And I showed him the bag, and he was impressed too. Then Mom came over and she liked it, and I put it on my back and tried walking around with it. Everyone was like, "Tani, great bag," or "Tani, you look so professional." And I was grinning so much my face was almost hurting. Then Coach Angel came back, and he said, "You can't have a great bag like that and not have a clock. Here. Merry Christmas." And he gave me this amazing digital clock that fit perfectly in my bag. And then another coach who I didn't even know as well as Coach Sean or Coach Angel came over and gave me a new notation book that he'd just bought for me from the shop too. I was laughing and saying thank you and laughing some more. Mom was laughing, too, but she was crying as well because that's the kind of thing moms do at times like this. I kept the bag on all the way back to my room. And then at the airport the next day when someone asked if I wanted to check the bag, I said, "No way. I'd like to keep it, please, sir," and I did. I wore the bag all the way back to New York. Even when we landed and got outside the airport and were waiting for Dad to come pick us up, I was holding the bag. Coach Sean was telling Mom that he was going to get an Uber, but Mom told him, "No, Coach Sean, my husband will drive you." But Tani's got school tomorrow, and it's late already. Coach Sean was trying really hard to persuade Mom to let him go, but Mom wasn't stopping. She had her arms folded and was lifting her eyebrows up really high. "Coach Sean," I said, "you don't want to argue with my mom when she's looking at you like that. Just apologize and do whatever she says quickly. That's what my brother and I do."